What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel, and it's time for a new video suggestion here on the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. It's time to give you the top 10 surprise teams from the first half of the 2023 college football season. The first half of the college football season of 2023 is officially complete. We are now heading into the second half of the college football season, but we're going to give you some surprise teams from that first half of the college football season, and breaking down the first half of the college football season in 2023. The first 4 weeks were kind of really quiet weekends. Didn't have a whole lot of big upsets. There were some upsets from there in the first 4 weeks, but Week 5 and Week 6 were definitely big surprises. There were definitely a lot of great upsets, in the last 2 weeks of the first half of the season. So we're going to give you some surprise teams here, the teams that have been very impressive so far in the college football season, and also, the teams that have been really impressed, toward me and everything. And this is going to be mostly based off of how the teams have performed and also played in the first half of the season, and also, just based off of the teams that I was not very high on heading into 2023. Some of them I still had making it to a bowl game, but some of them I didn't have them go into a bowl game this year. So let's get right into it. I'll get my opposite as well later on today. I'll give you the surprise teams right now, and then later on I'll give you my disappointing teams later on in a video as well. So stay tuned for that video. Let's get in my top 10 though surprise teams so far in the first half of the college football season, and we'll start with number 10. It's going to be Rutgers here, sitting at 4-2. I've been very impressed with the Rutgers in the first half of the season. It's not really just about the overall record for this team. It's not just about the turnaround for this team as well. It's kind of just been, the competitiveness from this team. They've been very competitive in almost all their games this year. It kind of started with that Northwestern game. They had a big win in that game against Northwestern. That was kind of a very important game for Rutgers to win, because both of those teams, if, Rutgers would have lost that game, I think they would have probably been sitting at 3-3 or maybe 2-4. But Rutgers have definitely been a surprise team so far. Again, you look at those games between Michigan and Wisconsin. Yes, they did lose those games, but they were only down 7 at the half against Michigan. They were very competitive in the first half of that game. And then, of course, Wisconsin, they did lose to them this past weekend, but only by 11 points. So the Rutgers seem like they are a very competitive team this year. A very decent team, but not like a great or good quality team or anything like that. Not a top 25-like team. They're not on the level of Ohio State or Michigan or Penn State, not even close. But if the Rutgers can have a really good rest of the year, they can still continue to compete. Rutgers might make a bowl game this year, and they have a really good opportunity to probably get their 5th win this upcoming weekend against Michigan State, which Michigan State has been absolutely terrible this year. So Rutgers sitting here at 4-2, definitely a big surprise in the first half of the college football season so far. Number 9 for me is Maryland. Maryland sitting here at 5-1. Same thing with kind of like the Rutgers. Their offense has been very good. The defense looks like it's been improved this year. I mean, offensively, you look at Maryland, they've been a very explosive offense over the course of the years. It's not just about the record as well for this team. Yes, they're sitting here at 5-1. That loss coming to Ohio State this past weekend. But they were very competitive. They were right there with Ohio State there in the first half. Second half, though, the Buckeyes found a way to pull away in that game. But Maryland, they started out 5-0 this season. You had like 4 Big Ten East teams that started out 5-0. You had Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State all starting out 5-0. Or actually, I should say, like Ohio State's 5-0 now, but they are 5-0 now in the first half of the season. And again, Maryland was one of those teams as well. So the Big Ten East had 4 undefeated teams. Maryland, though, I think is probably that 4th best team in the Big Ten East and everything. Like I said with the Rutgers, they're kind of similar to them. They were pretty decent against, Ohio State. Rutgers was, decent against, Michigan the first half. But, that was kind of similar to that game. Obviously, both teams pulled away in the second half. So Maryland here at number 9, they've been a very impressive team. Did not expect this team to start out 5-0 and be very competitive with Ohio State in that game this past weekend. Number 8 is BYU. They're sitting here at 4-1. This is a team I did not expect to be 4-1 in the first half of the season. And this is also a BYU team I did not predict to go to a bowl game this year. I thought this would be kind of like a step-back year for this team, especially after losing a bunch of production from last season, and also going to a new conference was going to be very tough for them. Now, their one loss comes to Kansas in the Big 12, so they did lose that game, but they do have a win over Arkansas out of the SEC, which I think was their biggest win of the season so far. So BYU sitting here at 4-1. I think they have a really good opportunity to probably go to a bowl game, but when you look at their schedule, it could be a little bit tougher for them. So, I mean, if BYU can make it to a bowl game in their first year of the Big 12 after having, lost all those guys from last year, BYU could very well be a surprise team at the end of the year. So BYU, they've been very impressive in the first half of the season. I know they lost to Kansas, but they were very competitive in that game, and I've just been very impressed with BYU so far in the first half of the season. They're number 8 here on my list. Number 7, we stay in the Big 12. We got West Virginia. This is also a team I don't expect to go to a bowl game this year, but you look at, the first half of the season, West Virginia did lose to Penn State on the road. Very tough place to play there. They didn't get blown out of that game, but West Virginia, they have won 4 straight ever since that loss to Penn State. West Virginia's got a win over Pittsburgh. That was a rival game there, but Pittsburgh turned out to be terrible this year. So West Virginia, I've been very impressed with them in the first half of the season. And I think this is a dark horse contender in the Big 12 based off of what I've seen so far in the first half of the year for the Mountaineers. It could be very well a tough task for them to make it to a bowl game for the rest of the year, but if they at least get 2 more wins, West Virginia might have a better year than last year. So West Virginia here, a very impressive start to the season. And again, this is a team that, was probably close to being one of the worst Big 12 teams from last season. I think I had them, finishing at the bottom of the Big 12 as well, but this is a team that's just very surprising me so far in the first half of the college football season. So they're number 7 here on my list. Number 6 is going to be Wisconsin. Wisconsin here at 4-1. I think a lot of people expected Wisconsin to be on this list, or maybe not be on this list, because a lot of people were very hyped up for this team. A lot of the, people had Wisconsin winning 8 or 9 games. I don't really see them winning 8 or 9 games. Back in my preseason prediction, I only predicted Wisconsin to go like 7-5 or something like that. So, I mean, Wisconsin is a team I don't really expect to make it to the Big Ten championship, but they're right there in that first place spot. The Big Ten West is a little bit, not wide open this year. Iowa and Wisconsin both control that division, and it will be decided this upcoming weekend when the Wisconsin will play Iowa. Good news is they get, Iowa at home this weekend, so I think this is the game that probably decides the Big Ten West perhaps, but that division is so wide open. If Wisconsin wins against Iowa, they definitely have a really good opportunity to make a run for the Big Ten championship, but they're sitting here at 4-1. They definitely have been a big surprise so far. Their one loss coming to Washington State in week number 2. They're number 6 here on this list. Number 5 is Washington State. Speaking of them, the team that defeated Wisconsin, they did get, beaten by UCLA this past weekend for their first loss of the season, but really, honestly, I've been very impressed with what Washington State has done in the first, 5 weeks, or I should say in the first half of the college football season. They do have a win, against Oregon State in the Pac-12, which was a very big win for them. If you just look at Washington State, what they have done this year is definitely been a big surprise. This is a team that I kept saying was a dark horse contender in the Pac-12, and I think they're right there. Not on the level of Oregon and Washington and USC, but they're right there to probably beat these teams in the Pac-12. If they would have beaten UCLA, they would have been sitting here at 5-0. But I think this is still a very big surprise team in 2023. You could just see how motivated this team is. So number 5 for me is Washington State here, sitting at 4-1. Number 4 is Missouri, sitting here at 5-1. I've been very impressed with Missouri in the first half of the season. I mean, this is a team that made it to the top 25 for the first time in a while. Now, they did lose to LSU this past weekend, had a really good opportunity in that game to probably win it and start out 6-0. They were very competitive, though, in that game. But, I think it was kind of wrong for the AP poll to knock out Missouri out of the top 25 after just losing by 10 to LSU at home. I mean, I think they should still be in the top 25 regardless. But they do have a win over Kansas State in the top 25. And, this just goes to show you that Missouri looks like a changed team. And, it looks like, Eli Drinkwitz has changed this program. And if Missouri can, run the table for the rest of the way, we'll find out if Missouri is good enough coming up this weekend when they, play Kentucky on the road. That will be a very tricky game for them, but they still got to play Arkansas, which is their rival. Arkansas looks like they're not a really good team this year, but there are very winnable games on the schedule for Missouri. They do get Tennessee at home. It's very well possible that Missouri could finish maybe the third best team in the SEC East, maybe behind Kentucky or maybe in the second place spot behind Georgia. So watch out for Missouri to probably make a run, maybe for the SEC championship, which I don't think it's going to happen, but I think Missouri has a really good chance to end out the year pretty strong. So they're number 4 here on my list, a very big surprise this year in 2023 so far. Number 3 is Florida, and I know a lot of people are not going to say that Florida is a very big surprise, but again, this is a Florida team that went 6-7 last year, but they have 4 wins already, and this team looks like they're going to make it to a bowl game. And the reason why Florida is a surprise team for me is because they defeated a top 10 team in Tennessee, maybe a top 15 team if you would rank them back then and everything. So Florida, they were ranked in the top 25 at one point. They did lose, to Kentucky, in that game a couple weeks ago, which was a very tough game for them on the road at Kentucky. I know they were sluggish in that game, but Florida was still Florida is still a very big surprise team for me. Again, this is a team that I was not very high on going into 2023. I only had them predicting 6-6. Their schedule really, it's going to be very tough for the rest of the way. They got South Carolina coming up this weekend. They also still have to play Arkansas out of the West. But, I think that's a very winnable game for them. And this is a team that could probably go 7-5, maybe 6-6 once again. But I think Florida fans would be very disappointed if they went 6-6 again. But I would say they probably can go 7-5, maybe 8-4. But they still have to play Florida State on the schedule as well, and also LSU. So Florida sitting here at 4-2, maybe a chance to go to a bowl game this year, but I don't think they're going to be very competitive against Georgia. I forgot to mention that game as well. That Georgia game is coming up as well for them, so that game is going to be really very tough for this Florida team. But they've been a very big surprise so far in the first half of the season, so this is my number 3 most surprised team of the first half of the year. Number 2 is obviously going to be Colorado. Colorado, definitely a big surprise, but they're not my number 1 most surprising team just based off of how they've been performing these past 3 games. But Colorado, you look at them, they started out 3-0. I mean, who would have thought they would start out 3-0 with wins over TCU, Nebraska, and Colorado State? Now, Colorado State went into overtime. That was a very tricky game there for Colorado. It was a rival game anyway, so you never know what can happen in that kind of game, but you look at Colorado in the last 3 games, had that win over Arizona State this past weekend by 3 points, and then they had those tough games against Oregon and USC. They were very competitive against USC. I think they had a really good opportunity to win that game and probably pull off an upset in that game, but USC just finds a way to win these close games as their defense kind of steps up at the end of the day. But Colorado, they definitely have been a surprise. This is a team that I only predicted to win 4 games this year, and they're sitting at 4 right now. I did have them losing to TCU and Nebraska, but having them winning against Colorado State, so I had them starting out 1-2, but then the Pac-12 schedule was going to be a little bit tougher, but Colorado definitely deserves to be on this list for what they have done in the first year head coach of Deion Sanders. I mean, Colorado can make it to a bowl game at the end of the year, but with them in the Pac-12 schedule, it's going to be a very tough task because they still have some tougher games on the schedule. They still got Utah at the end of the year. So we'll see what Colorado does at the end of the year. Will they make it to a bowl game in Deion Sanders' first year and be out to a surprise team? Or will this team lose the rest of their games after that tough game against Arizona State? But Colorado is not my most surprised team in the first half of the college football season, as that is bringing into my number 1 team now here in my top 10 list. And that team, for me, that has been the most surprised team in the first half of the college football season of 2023 is going to be the Louisville Cardinals. Louisville here at 6-0. They're number 1 here. They definitely deserve to be here at number 1. I know a lot of people probably won't agree with this. There's other options out there, but Louisville, based off of what I've seen so far from them in the first half, it's not just about the record. Yes, they're undefeated, but it's just the talent on this team, that they got, and also the motivation from the coaching staff on this team, and also the schedule really set up nicely for Louisville. Again, no Clemson, no Florida State, no North Carolina on the schedule. I mean, you pull off a huge upset this past weekend against a top 10 team of Notre Dame. That was kind of enough for me here to put Louisville here at number 1, just based off of what I've seen so far in the first half of the year for this Louisville team. Jeff Brom looks like he's changed this program. I thought it was going to take Louisville time, to kind of rebuild this program. I did have Louisville going to a bowl game in their first year under Jeff Brom, only going 6-6, but this team is 6-0. They have really started out strong. The schedule the rest of the way is not very tough for Louisville. Their only toughest game on that schedule, I would say, is probably Miami. They got Pittsburgh on the road coming up this weekend, which I think is a very winnable game for Louisville because Pittsburgh has not been very good this year. They've been a very big disappointment. So Louisville here at number 1 for me as the most surprised team so far of the college football season. And again, they're sitting here at 6-0. And again, a top 10 win against a Notre Dame team that's been very good this year. And that was kind of enough for me here to put them, again, here at number 1. But again, the schedule really sets up nicely the rest of the way for this Louisville team. Again, no North Carolina, no Florida State, no Clemson on the schedule. Louisville could end up going to the ACC championship by the end of the year. I mean, it's very possible that they could likely go to New Year's Six bowl game as well. So Louisville here at number 1 for me. And those are my top 10 surprise teams from the first half of the 2023 college football season. I want to let you guys get your thoughts on these surprise teams. What do you think about these teams? Do you see any surprising teams out there that I missed? And also, I'll give you my opposite video in just a bit later on. I'll give you the top 10 disappointing teams later on. So stay tuned for that video. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports Channel.